U.S. President-elect Donald Trump threatens to reclaim control of Panama Canal. Georgia's President Salome Zurabishvili calls on government to engage in dialogue about the elections to resolve the situation in the country. Rome's iconic Trevi Fountain has reopened after a month of renovations ahead of a massive religious event. In a sharp diplomatic clash, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has threatened to reclaim control of the Panama Canal, accusing Panama of overarching the United States. In response, Panamanian President José Raúl Mulino reaffirmed the canal's sovereignty, rejecting foreign interference.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has threatened to push for the return of the Panama Canal to American control, accusing Panama of charging exorbitant fees for its use. Speaking to supporters in Arizona, Trump expressed frustration over Panama's management of the canal.
You got to treat us fairly, and they haven't treated us fairly. If the principles, both moral and legal, of this magnanimous gesture of giving are not followed, then we will demand that the Panama Canal be returned to the United States of America in full, quickly and without question. I'm not going to stand for it. So to the officials of Panama, please be guided accordingly.
Trump also emphasized the strategic importance of the Panama Canal to the United States, highlighting its significant role in global trade and U.S. military operations.
The United States is the #1 user of the Panama Canal, with over 72% of all transits heading to or from U.S. ports. Think of that. So we built it. We're the ones that use it. They gave it away. Considered one of the one of the great wonders of the world. The Panama Canal opened for business 110 years ago and was built at huge cost to the United States. And
in response to Trump's remarks, Panamanian President José Raúl Mulino firmly reaffirmed Panama's sovereignty over the canal.
Every square meter of the Panama Canal and its adjacent areas belong to Panama and will continue to belong to Panama. The sovereignty and independence of our country are not negotiable.
Mulino also addressed the issue of canal fees, which Trump had criticized as excessive.
Rates are not a whim. They are established publicly in an open hearing, considering market conditions, international competition, operating costs, and the needs of maintenance and modernization of the interoceanic waterway.
Trump's comments on the canal have sparked a rare public diplomatic clash between the U.S. and Panama, with potential implications for U.S.-Panamanian relations going forward. The Panama Canal, which connects the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, remains a crucial link for global trade and U.S. military operations.
Cuba is enduring a worsening economic crisis that the government blames on United States sanctions that have been in place since 1962. The economic blockade, they say, takes a devastating toll on the country's agriculture, with farmers and residents calling for change. Meanwhile, thousands of Cubans marched in front of the U.S. Embassy in Havana to protest long-standing sanctions.
On the outskirts of Havana, farmer Jose Sosa struggles to keep his 18-hectare farm running under crippling U.S. sanctions. With no access to modern machinery or fertilizers, Sosa relies on oxen and organic methods to grow staple crops like cassava and tomatoes.
We do not have the resources we need to take care of the plantations. All these limitations have us exhausted.
The blockade impacts livestock too. Milk production has plummeted, leaving children and the elderly without adequate nutrition. Resident Manuel Reistra highlights the human toll.
But nutrition depends on other, bigger things. Look at the clear examples with children's milk. What a great thing, baby's milk. In any country in the world, children's nutrition is strong because milk is their fundamental food. However, in the country we are going through a serious problem that has nothing to do with the system or the governors. It is a humanistic problem, really humanistic, right?
The Cuban government estimates $271 million in agricultural losses over 6 months, intensifying calls for an end to the decades-long sanctions. This sentiment was echoed during a large protest in Havana this week, where thousands marched to condemn the blockade. Demonstrators rallied near the U.S. Embassy, holding Cuban flags and calling for Cuba's removal from the state sponsors of terrorism list.
It is the same hand that we have extended to all the governments of the United States, from the triumph of the revolution to today, always in terms of a serious, respectful relationship. But if the United States persists in its efforts to break our sovereignty, our independence, our socialism, they will only find rebellion and intransigence.
As Cuba faces mounting challenges, the march sends a message of defiance and determination to address the island's struggles.
Protests erupted in Serbia, where thousands gathered to demand accountability for the fatal incident at Novi Sad railway station.
Tens of thousands of Serbians gathered in the capital, Belgrade, to demand accountability from the government over the deadly collapse of a concrete canopy at Novi Sad railway station on November 1st, which claimed 15 lives. Protesters, including farmers, artists and students, filled Slavia Square in response to calls from student and farmer unions. The demonstrators voiced their anger and frustration at the government's handling of the matter. President Aleksandar Vučić responded to the protests by lifting the secrecy on documents related to the construction and repair of the railway station. However, students dismissed the move, claiming the released documents were incomplete and failed to provide the full picture. As a result of protests, universities have suspended classes for weeks as students camp out in faculty buildings, demanding the release of those detained in previous demonstrations. Academics, opposition politicians and artists have also joined their cause, amplifying calls for transparency and reform. Despite the growing movement, President Vučić urged students to return to their studies, insisting that their demands had been addressed. The tragedy at Novi Sad railway station, which left 15 dead and 2 injured, has triggered a wave of criticism against the government. In the aftermath, authorities detained 11 individuals, including former construction minister Goran Vesic. Others arrested include Serbian Railways Infrastructure Director Jelena Tanaskovic, former director Nebojša Šurlan, and Assistant Minister for Railway Transport Anita Dimoski. The incident has drawn attention to alleged negligence during repair work at the station in 2021. Prosecutors have questioned at least 40 individuals, while opposition parties continue to hold the government accountable for what they describe as systemic failures.
Georgia's President Salome Zurabishvili participated in a pro-European Union demonstration in the country's capital city of Tbilisi. Speaking from the stage set up in front of the first public school on Shota Rustaveli Avenue, addressing thousands of demonstrators on the avenue, Zurabishvili called on the government to renew parliamentary elections. We invited the government to engage in dialogue about the elections to resolve the situation in the country. Since November 28, protests have been taking place in Tbilisi over the authorities' decision to suspend negotiations on the country's accession to the EU from the agenda until 2028. The main demand of the protesters is the holding of new elections in the country. The demand is shared by President Zurabishvili, opposition politicians and some NGOs. In the first days where the mass riots near the parliament, dozens of law enforcers and protesters as well as journalists were injured. Since December 4th, the situation in Tbilisi has been relatively calm. Zurabishvili has joined the protest, emphasizing her commitment to Georgia's European aspirations and denouncing the recent parliamentary election results as fraudulent. The ruling Georgian Green Party has elected Mikhail Kavelashvili as the new president, with his term scheduled to begin on December 29th. Zurabishvili, however, disputes the legitimacy of this election and has vowed to stay in her position until new parliamentary elections are held. Russian President Vladimir Putin held talks with Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico in Moscow, the Kremlin confirmed. The discussions between the two sides focused on a range of international issues, including the future of Russian gas transit through Ukraine. The meeting took place ahead of the expiration of a crucial gas transit deal between Russia and Ukraine, set to end on January 1, 2025. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has made it clear that Kiev doesn't intend to extend the contract. Earlier, Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić also mentioned that Fico's visit aims to address the implications of the ending deal and its potential impact on Europe's natural gas supply. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan reaffirmed that Syria's territorial integrity is non-negotiable, emphasizing that there is no place for the PKK-YPG terror group in the country. He made a statement during a joint press conference with Ahmed al-Shara, leader of Syria's new administration in Damascus. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan said that the Turkish state, its people and the President Recep Tayyip Erdogan will always stand by Syria and its people. The minister said it's absolutely unacceptable to tolerate Israel exploiting current situation to seize Syria's territories, referring to Israel's recent attacks on Syrian lands after the fall of the Bashar al-Assad's government. Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan stressed that Syria's darkest period is left behind and better days are ahead. Meanwhile, al-Shara expressed gratitude, stating that friendly country Turkey has supported Syrians since the beginning of the revolution. He said the only arms in Syria will be held by the state, arguing that any armed groups, whether in areas under their control or those under the control of the terrorist PKK-YPG, will not be accepted. Syria is gradually rebuilding in the aftermath of the Assad's fall. As the country recovers, its people are reclaiming their culture, freedom and identity. From the streets of Idlib and Aleppo to the halls of Damascus, the nation is stepping into a new era filled with hope and possibility.
Thousands gathered in Idlib for a concert organised by the London-based humanitarian group Syria Relief. The concert featured renowned Syrian artist Yahya Hawa, drawing large crowds who celebrated with music and resistance-themed anthems. Syrian flags fluttered across the venue, creating a vibrant and peaceful atmosphere that embodied the resilience of the Syrian people. The day before, a similar celebration took place in Aleppo, where Yahya Hawa's performance underscored the region's growing cultural revival. These events unfold alongside significant political shifts. By early December, opposition forces had gained control of key provinces, including Aleppo, Idlib, Hama and Homs. On December 7, 2024, opposition forces entered Damascus, bringing an end to the Ba'ath Party's 61-year reign. Assad fled the capital the next day, seeking asylum in Russia. Following the government's collapse, the Syrian National Army launched the Dawn of Freedom operation, liberating Tel Rifat and Manbij from PKK-YPG control. A transitional government was quickly established, with Mohammed al-Bashir appointed interim prime minister until March 2025. Turkey reopened its embassy in Damascus on December 14th, signalling a shift in regional diplomacy. Several Western nations have also sent delegations to the Syrian capital, marking a new chapter in Syria's international relations.
Still in Syria, former security forces of the ousted President Bashar al-Assad are handing over their weapons to the new authorities and getting their temporary papers.
Former Syrian security forces are queuing up to hand over their weapons and receive temporary settlement cards from the country's de facto authority, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. These security forces served under the former president, Bashar al-Assad, who was ousted by a rebel group that has taken control of the country. Now they return state-issued valuables, among other items, as part of a reconciliation process aiming to reintegrate Assad's forces in the new Syria.
Today, I came to settle my army situation, as there is a new page in the country now. God willing, we hope that Commander Ahmed al-Shara will be by our side, hand in hand, and that he will forgive the entire country for everything it has been through, because we have been through a lot of difficult circumstances.
Participants received temporary cards, valid for 3 months, while their status is reviewed. The new authorities say those without criminal charges will be allowed to resume normal civilian life.
This is a settlement center for settling the status of security personnel, army personnel, and recruits affiliated with the remnants of the former regime. Those who come to the center here hand over their covenant, weapons, and valuable belongings to the Syrian state, and they're given a temporary card for 3 months. The future is subject to the leadership's decision, of course. Those who did not shed our blood will live a normal life like any citizen, but those who are legally liable and those who have cases will of course face the judiciary and the competent courts.
Research carried out by the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons suggests that Assad's government is responsible for many atrocities as it tried to tackle political dissent, with the use of chemical weapons in rebel areas that killed dozens of civilians.
A symbol of Rome regains its brilliance. After a month of meticulous restoration, the Trevi Fountain has reopened to the public, part of Rome's preparations for the 2025 Roman Catholic Holy Year.
The Trevi Fountain, one of Rome's most cherished landmarks, has reopened after an extraordinary restoration that brings new life to this 18th century masterpiece. For centuries, this iconic fountain has been a symbol of beauty, history, and romance in the eternal city. Now, after 3 months of meticulous cleaning and repairs, the marble gleams brighter than ever, inviting visitors from around the world to experience its timeless allure. But the fountain's reopening isn't just about preservation. New rules are in place to protect its grandeur, including a limit of 400 visitors at a time during the day and a ban of sitting along its edges. The cost of restoration is €327,000, funded by the European Union's recovery program, as the first major work on the fountain since 2014. Designed by Italian architect Nicola Salvi and completed in the 18th century. This late Baroque marble remains one of the world's most photographed and visited landmarks. It's an experience that leaves a lasting impression on everyone who sees it. Now, with its beauty fully restored, it's ready to enchant the next generation of dreamers.
Well, that's all we have for this hour. You can also get latest news and headlines around the clock on our website, that is anews.tv. Thank you for watching, and also we wish you a good day ahead.